welcome everybody to this special edition of Brownsville Tech Live. And in the house tonight, we've got City Commissioner John Cowen, who is serving currently on the City Commissioner as City Commissioner, and he's also running for mayor in this election in May. Mr. Cowen, welcome.
Thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, Mr. Cowan, it is an honor to have you on today. And I just wanted to, give you a brief introduction and allow you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, who John Cowan is, where he's been, what he's done. Could you give us a little bit of some insight into who John Cowan is?
Sure, it'll be a pleasure. I'm born and raised here in Brownsville, and I went away to college at the University of Notre Dame, and I graduated in 2002. And afterwards, I lived in Chicago and New York City, working for a professional services firm called Deloitte. And then in 2007, I decided to move back home with my fiance at the time, and back to my hometown to help out run the family business down here, which my dad started back in the 80s and 90s. So since then, I've been president of our family business, which is mainly deals with international logistics and supply chain management.
Hmm.
So we help manufacturers in Mexico efficiently move their goods back and forth across the border. And then we've also gotten involved in multifamily development in the Valley, and we also have a software company in Matamoros that helps with our logistics business as well. So a little tech, that we get involved with every once in a while.
Well, that's good. That's good to know that you guys are in tech. I've been in the industry for like 30 years, so it's good to have people that you know when it comes to tech. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And so back in, I think it was 2009 or so, I started getting involved on different boards.
Hmm.
I got onto the Brownsville Housing Authority board there for about 7 years, and then I was appointed to the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation, which is the economic development organization that basically focuses on primary job creation and capital investment. Um, and then I decided to run for office about 4 years ago to be on the city commission. So it's been a wild ride. I've enjoyed it very much. Great to be able to give back to the community.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I wanted to give you an opportunity, was to kind of share your vision or your plans for what you plan to accomplish if you are elected mayor this spring. What are some of the things you'd like to do?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's about having a sound economic development model going forward. I think we're at, as you know, we are, on the face of national media now for good things, for SpaceX, for the upcoming LNG development that's likely going to happen at the port. I mean, I think investment attracts investment, and if we can really capitalize on our momentum, I think the sky is the limit. And obviously, we have an incredible amount of brain drain, at least for the last couple of generations, where our best and brightest typically leave
Right.
and go to other parts of the country. And I think using our assets here to really make sure the future is for our kids and our grandkids to be in Brownsville. And we have all the tools. We have the higher education. We have a great community college. We have strong ISDs. We have the workforce. We have the port. We have a strong and partner in Matamoros as well that we can leverage. And I think with the right leadership, we can continue to be a leader here in the Valley and at the state level.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is, what can we do to nurture the relationship right now that we have with SpaceX? Obviously, for a lot of folks who know, we are a channel that covers SpaceX quite a bit, so we're very interested in the future as it relates to SpaceX. And what is it that we can do to continue to nurture that relationship? I mean, I know there is a lot of folks out there that are a little concerned about SpaceX, about the beach and stuff like that. What do you think we can do? Can we find a balance between our economic needs as well as our environmental needs?
I think that's crucial. I think we have to find that balance, and I think SpaceX is definitely open to working with us as a community to make sure that it is a win-win relationship. I know it there is a sacrifice, right? Not being able to have access to Boca Chica, as on demand, right? There
Right.
that is a sacrifice, but I think there's a huge amount that we get in return, and I think that needs to be welcome and appreciated. And we have a great relationship with SpaceX currently. We're constantly talking to them, and we understand their pain points, and they understand ours, right? And I think they've been a great partner, and I think they want to continue growing and being a big part of our community.
Mhm. Well, one of the things that I know, well, first of all, how many employees does SpaceX currently employ? There's
Yeah.
been all kinds of numbers thrown out there, and I think nobody really has a clear-cut idea of how many employees they actually employ
So
down there.
I spoke with Maricela Cortez last week. I believe she's the director of governmental relations at SpaceX, and
Right.
they have 1,729 employees currently.
And how many of those are actually local employees versus employees from the outside? Because there's also that
Yeah.
idea that there's more outsiders than insiders. Can you kind of clarify that for us?
I believe that it's about 80 to 90% of the workforce is local
Okay.
and live in Brownsville. So I think that's a huge revenue generator for us. Everything is uh gets compounded through our businesses and through our tax revenue, right? So I think it's what we've been lacking the last few generations, right? Is having that industrial tax base impact
Right.
other than the port, really.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I know that we need in this city and really in the entire region is
Yeah,
higher paying jobs. I mean higher paying
right.
jobs equals an increased tax base. It means more home buying. Uh, so it's something that is a positive. Now you touched a little bit with regards to LNG and where is that project? I mean, I think at one time it was like what, two or three plants that we're going to build out there at the port. Is how many plants are we talking about, and what kind of jobs and how many jobs are we looking at there?
Well, I was with Eddie Campirano also last week on an economic development panel called Why Texas.
Hmm.
And he gave us an update, and he's expecting the announcement to come this month
Yeah.
that the one LNG that is further along in the process and is almost ready to announce should be announcing soon. They're anticipating about 6,000 construction jobs
Wow.
over the course of about 8 years, right? And the permanent jobs won't be as many, but they'll be high paying. I believe I had read or heard it was about 70 to $80,000 on average for the permanent jobs, right? And so that with that kind of growth, it there's positives and there's negatives, right? And so we're trying to get ahead of that and making sure we're ready to deal with that influx of construction workers and making sure that they hire as many local people as possible that have the skills needed.
Hmm. Now, one of the things that I think I read an article a while back was that there are opportunities for these plants, especially if they decide to build here to kind of leverage, and I hate to use the word leverage, but they can leverage the need of Europe right now. As you know, they are constantly under threat of being held hostage because the Russians are constantly threatening to cut their natural gas supply. So I had read somewhere that there's an opportunity for us to leverage that crisis by supplying the Europeans eventually, which will mean more business for the port.
Right. I think that's a driver in this whole project is the you know the um, the strength of the U.S. oil and gas industry, right? Being able to be that buffer for Europe and for Asia. Um, but my understanding is this development will also serve South America and the Caribbean, right? So it's not just Europe that or Asia that they're going to serve. It's going to be the whole world, which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, with regards back to SpaceX, there is a viewpoint out there, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's a viewpoint that SpaceX um, is only going to be an R&D facility, and we know that currently that is the case. That it is going to be an R&D. There, most of the commercial launches will be in Florida. But one of the things is, Elon Musk has plans to launch over 100 starships a year. I think that was the plan. And so while we may be an R&D facility, I mean, we could necessarily transform into a rocket manufacturing facility down the road. Where else can you possibly, have the skill set and the knowledge already in place to do that? You know, the other thing I was telling somebody the other day, logistically speaking, I don't think they can even move those rockets other than cross country through the Panama Canal. So if they wanted to ship those final assembled rockets, would it not make sense to build them here in Brownsville and ship them right across the Gulf? Why have to go around South America and then back the other way? So I was telling this individual, you got to look towards the big picture. I mean, if if it's true that they want to build and launch 100 rocket starships a year eventually, I mean, I feel we would be the ideal place to do so. We've got our port, we've got, you know, everything here and the knowledge base, you know.
I totally agree with you. I think that was a very strategic move on behalf of SpaceX's part to select Brownsville as for this facility, right? And I think they can pivot pretty easily and do a whole lot of things here. And also, what's exciting is I went to a SpaceX vendor conference that they had. I believe it was about a year ago, and they brought in, I believe it was 62 companies that currently supply SpaceX, right? And we were there to pitch Brownsville and what we could do, and there's a lot of interest in these companies and in being closer to SpaceX here in Brownsville. And I think that's the opportunity that we have in front of us is making sure that if SpaceX is successful, we're going to be successful in growing with them and attracting more business, more supplier base, more all that ancillary services that are provided, right?
Right.
And that builds that ecosystem. And at GBIC, which I am the current chairman of the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation, we developed a grant program in partnership with UTRGV to help fund R&D for these high tech companies that are looking for partnerships with higher ed. And so we've already funded one space related company called Cosmic Shielding,
Mm-hmm.
and the founder is a professor he's from I believe Switzerland or he's an MIT professor, and instead of doing his project up there, he wants to be closer to SpaceX down here, and currently using UTRGV and their professors and their students to help develop their products, which is really exciting.
That's good. That's good. Like I said, you talked a while ago about brain drain, and I'll be honest with you, I was born and raised in Brownsville, but when I graduated, from high school, they didn't offer a computer science program. So I had to
Yes.
literally leave the valley to actually obtain one, and which is
Mm.
what was the typically what would happen before. And obviously, if they were already up there, the chances of them coming back probably were small. I was one of the lucky ones that actually came back. I actually came back by accident. I sent my resume as a joke to a company down here, and the joke was on me. I've been here ever since. And I'm glad I did. Honestly, I'm glad I did because
Yeah.
by the time I came back, NAFTA had been implemented, so I actually got to work in the maquila industry for quite a long time. And so, those I started seeing the changes once NAFTA passed and it was implemented and so forth. So, I've seen it, and as I've followed SpaceX through the last several years, I see what the changes have been. Incrementally at times, but they've been there. So, one of the things I wanted to talk to you a little bit is with regards to the airport. I know that you guys were out there about a week and a half ago. You announced a new airline that will be servicing Brownsville. Obviously, that airline is Avelo Airlines, and they're going to have direct flights to Orlando as well as LA. And I wanted to kind of touch base a little bit here with regards to what can we do from a marketing perspective and an encouragement perspective to increase our passenger traffic. That's one of the things that I know in the past. I've done a lot of traveling in the past, and obviously, there always seems to be a price difference between the tickets in Brownsville versus the other two airports. What can we do to encourage people to use our airport and fly our airport? I mean, it's quite a beauty. There's no doubt. I mean, there's nothing like it. I think for at least 300 miles. So what can we do to encourage that? And what can we do to ensure that Avelo is a success? I understand that the company was started by, was it JetBlue? No. No, he
I
was
believe it was Allegiant.
Allegiant. That's right. It
Yeah.
was Allegiant. Yeah. So what can we do about marketing the airport and getting people to, use our airport? I mean, especially now with this new airline offering the flights that they do.
Yeah, I think the city of Brownsville is committed to helping with that marketing effort and doing everything from all the social media to target marketing. Brownsville currently we lose about two-thirds of our traffic to Harlingen, mostly and McAllen, right? So
Right.
I've been told about there's about 900 people that fly each day that are from Brownsville,
Wow.
or that and so we only get 300 of those passengers.
Yeah.
So the potential is enormous to grow our airport, and having a low cost carrier, I think, in Brownsville will help ultimately bring down those fares. And I think that's what Southwest does in Harlingen.
Right.
And they've had Frontier and these other low cost carriers up there too that help bring down fares, right? And so
Right.
the more connections we have, the more carriers we have, it's a greater competition, and I think everyone benefits at the end of the day. Um, so we really need Avella to be successful in order for us to make sure that you know more people fly out of Brownsville and we get more carriers at the end of the day. And so I think making sure that the market is verified and I think the results so far have been very strong for Avello. That's what they've
Hmm.
told me, or that's what they've told the city.
Yeah, I've been following up ever since you guys announced on, the airline. It was kind of interesting the way they started. I believe they started flying out of Burbank
Yeah,
when they first started. So it was definitely a surprise to me, honestly. I had expected another airline,
yeah.
but obviously,
Well, we were actually really close to getting a carrier pre-COVID,
get that.
and and COVID really derailed all that.
Yeah.
And I think now that the airline industry is back on more solid grounds, it's great timing, and we're super excited.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be exciting, that's for sure. I definitely want to head over to LA with some of those prices. Let's talk a little bit about with regards to what happened over the last 2 years, obviously with COVID. But really, I don't want to talk so much about the pandemic. But one of the things that, from a technology standpoint, we noticed is that there's a large chunk of our citizens, excuse me, that lack internet connectivity. We saw kids waiting in line with their parents, at the school districts when the pandemic started, waiting for these hotspots like one of these.
Yeah.
Uh, but the bad part about it is these things were slow, extremely slow. And I was just so surprised that in today's day and age when you can access, the internet via your phone, that we still had a large amount of the population that didn't have internet connectivity. In addition to, they were waiting in line for Chromebooks, which was a travesty in itself, because I mean, I take it for granted that, I have connectivity all the time and I've got access all over the place. I mean, the only thing missing is probably the refrigerator here at home to have internet access. But one of the things that I know that you guys have been working on is the City Fiber initiative out there. And I wanted to kind of see if I could get a little bit of insight into what that project is. I've had a couple of other commissioners in the past come and talk about it, but I guess the question that I have is, what is it? How is it going to benefit the citizens of Brownsville? And are we going to get to 100% coverage? And if we don't get to 100% coverage, would it be a good idea to look at other alternatives like Starlink, or maybe even going back to the well and, talking to Spectrum and saying, okay, we've got X amount of folks we can't cover. What can you do to lower the cost of internet for these folks? I mean, I pay like $70 a month, I think, for internet, but for some of our citizens, that's a lot of money. And so I wanted to kind of get an idea of where we're at with the fiber, and do you plan to continue looking at that project, and moving forward with it should you get elected?
Yeah, I think it's a landmark project for the city. It's innovative in the fact that we did it under a P3 structure, which is a public-private partnership, right? We didn't bear the whole risk to do this deal. So we're contributing $19.5 million, and we're partnering with a company called Lit Communities,
Right.
and they're going to be running the fiber from the middle mile, which the city will own and operate, um, to the businesses and residents, right? And so the idea is going to cover the whole city, right? And I think that's the intent, and that's what we're going to push for. We're actually the city is going to be breaking ground I think in the next month or two. Um, I believe they're building 8 fiber rings in
Mm-hmm.
the city, and the first one will be in the downtown area, and that's starting, I believe, in the next month or two.
Okay. All right. So eventually you see that. I mean, what are we talking about? How much of the city will be covered? 100% or 80%,
So
70%?
it's 100%.
Okay.
100% will have access to low cost fiber internet.
Okay.
And I believe that the numbers they threw out were about $40 a month,
Wow.
for better, higher higher quality internet than you currently get.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because
Yeah,
definitely, $40 is a little bit more reasonable than $70. I've heard
right,
people paying like $200 for cable and internet, and I'm like, wow,
right.
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and you can see, it's really sad that the other service providers never took a risk on Brownsville, right? And I can see, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a business decision, but Brownsville was the least connected community in the United States,
Yeah.
right? And that puts our community at a disadvantage on a variety of levels, right? Not just education, but people applying for jobs. Most people have to do that online. Telehealth, right?
Right.
Opportunities, things like that. It's just we start to not be as competitive, and to have a ultimately a lower quality of life.
Right. Well, definitely, the pandemic obviously pushed us in places we hadn't been before. We had to do virtual instruction. We had to
Yeah.
do telemedicine, quite a
Mhm.
bit. So, for those elderly and for those that are, less economically disadvantaged, those things were a little difficult to do, you know,
Right.
without the connectivity. So, um, we're very excited about this project, and we just wanted to get some feedback with regards to that project as a whole. Um, the other thing I want to talk to you about, and not in detail really, because I've got another podcast with somebody else specifically to talk about that. But what do you think needs to be done to bring more participation from the average citizen in city committees and boards? And should changes be made with regards to ensuring that SME, which is subject matter expertise for those that sit on a city board, along with term limits and the flexibility to add or remove members at will? I mean, it was recently that we have had a few issues with the PUB board, primarily who sits on it, the folks with the level of experience with regards to sitting on a utility company board. Uh, what can we do to make those changes and so that the citizens feel like they've got participation in that process?
I think that's a great question. That question was really vetted out in the charter committee that was tasked on bringing potential charter amendments to the commission for approval, right? And I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is our municipal elections, right? If you elect qualified city commissioners, you're likely going to have qualified board members at the end of the day, right? And I think
Right.
there is a domino effect there. If you where does it stop? Do you want to put restrictions on city commissioners too, making sure that they're qualified to run a basically a $400 million organization if you combine PUB in the city, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think the current PUB board is pretty strong when it comes to qualifications. We can always improve things, but it's the current board that they weren't the ones that did the Tenasca deal, right?
Right.
They're actually tasked on they have the hard task of the fallout and taking a lot of the heat, and but we're making a lot of progress there.
Yeah.
But
Now.
I want to go back to your question on how citizens can get more involved. And I really think the best way is to reach out to your commissioner and making sure if you want to be on a board that you contact them directly and you explain why you want to be on it and why you're qualified.
Mhm.
I think that has an impact. So I mean there's we have I believe there's over 20 boards at the city, and there's opportunities everywhere. We're always looking for good candidates.
Oh, well, that's good to know. One of the things that I wanted to touch a little bit on is accessibility with regards to our elected officials. I'll be honest with you, I did invite the mayor several times, the current sitting mayor several times. He was probably busy, specifically because I want to talk about the fiber project at the time, you know.
Yeah.
But obviously, our schedules never, they just never paired up. So, uh, what will you do to be a little bit more accessible with regards to uh, to that? Because obviously, we do need our elected officials to be accessible to the public. You know.
I totally agree with you. And I'm not going to really speak to the current mayor or what he may have done in the past, right? I want to talk about what I'm going to do.
All right.
I mean, I really view public service and in particular the commission, right? We work for you guys,
Yeah.
right? We work for the community. We're not at the top, we're at the very bottom, in my opinion, right? And so if there's a concern, if there's a something that you want to talk about, I'm 100% reachable. I've always answered my phone. I've always answered every email. You want to meet with me, you want to talk to me, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm all about engagement and making sure that your questions or issues get addressed.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things that, I think that goes a long ways to ensure that our elected officials are accessible, and for the most part, you guys have been.
Yeah.
Every time I've sent a text, you guys have been responsive.
I,
So
I, I think there's I'm gonna I try to do a good job in communicating this, but we do have a process at the city. If there is a problem in the city, you should always call 546 help. Obviously if it's an emergency, call emergency numbers, right? But if there's anything, a pothole or something that you want addressed, go through the
yeah,
proper channels. But if you're not getting service from the city, or if there's an urgent thing that you want to talk about, then I think contacting the elected official is perfectly, that's the way to do it.
One of the things that I know that when I had Mr. Tro on 2 weeks ago, and I actually didn't put it as a question in the list here, but it's something that you hear quite often from prospective business owners is that it's difficult to do business in Brownsville, at least to start up, because there's too many rules and too many regulations.
Mhm.
What do you think needs to be done to lessen that burden? And I'll be honest with you, I had an experience with the city trying to get a certificate of occupancy, and it took me forever. And I would go over to City Plaza, and they tell me you need this. I'd go get it. You need this. I'd come back. You'd go get it. I need this. It was just tough. And what can we do about improving that because it is tough from a small business owner at the time. It was tough, trying to get that city of occupancy certificate.
No, I think we definitely heard it when I ran for office back then too, and a couple of things that we did to try to address this was, you know, using technology, right?
Right.
Back then, everything was pretty much done manually. You had to bring in paperwork, and you talk to one person, they would tell you one story, the next person would tell you a different story. We decided to invest a lot of money in a system called I believe it's called Acela,
Uh-huh.
and it's a digital permitting system, and it's currently being implemented. It's just taking a long time. So you're going to be able, when you apply for a permit, you're going to be able to know what the status is, what you're missing, who you need to talk to. You can communicate through the app or through the program. Um, so it should cut down on a lot of the miscommunication. Um, there have been challenges on the city side on just having enough personnel and enough qualified, trained people able to manage obviously the influx of business to the city, right? We during uh like post COVID, it was been crazy, right? The city's been growing. A lot of people put in construction permits. We don't have enough people to handle that.
Yeah.
And plan reviewers are in high demand. So we're at a point where it's, we're trying to grow as well as a city. And that's, we're currently dealing with that. We're still dealing with that.
Yeah.
But I think that the tech part will definitely help things once that system's fully implemented.
Right. Well, that's good, like I said, because it was quite a challenge at the time, trying to
Yeah,
get that certificate of occupancy between dealing with them and the fire marshal. I don't know which one was worse.
I've been through it too as a business owner. I've been through all those things with the city. Yeah,
But one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit, and I know there's been a lot of controversy over the last few months, has been what your expectations are with regards to PUB and anyone that is selected as its new CEO. I have no idea where that process is right now, but what can the the new leadership do to restore the public trust between themselves and the citizens that they serve? It's there's obviously has been a disconnect, and what are your expectations moving forward with PUB and its new leadership whenever that happens to restore that public trust between the citizens that they serve? Because in the end, we it's our utility company. We own it. We have that uniqueness that no other Valley city has, that we own our own utility company, whether people view it positively or negatively. But what do you expect PUB to do in its new leadership when it's selected to restoring that public trust?
yeah. I think ultimately it's paramount that the new leaders is just like you said, making sure that we're working. Everything we do at PUB is for the public and the public's benefit, right? And making sure that our water rates and our electric rates are the most competitive in our region and in the state, right? There's no reason why we should be more expensive than anyone else,
Right.
right? If we own it, there's no reason.
Yeah.
And making sure that we plan, we have great planning in terms of forecasting and making sure that we're ready to, that we're able to grow when we need to, both on the water and the electric side, right? And so I think that's going to be the challenge. I understand it's hard to find someone that's an expert in both or knowledgeable in both water and electricity, right? And so that's one of the challenges that we're going to have. But ultimately, it's having a leader that is public public focused, right? And making sure that we're transparent and that we have um, a better communication strategy with the public. Because I think it's improving. And I don't know if you follow PUB on Facebook, but their messages are on point. They're very time sensitive to issues around the city, making sure people are aware of certain closures and when they're restored. And it has improved over the last couple of months, and I will work continuously to make sure that gets better.
Do you think that the new leadership should be somebody from the outside or somebody coming in from the ranks at this point? Or is there any
I think that
plans to find somebody on the outside, I guess?
I mean that I've been through a number of searches. I was on the city manager search, recently. I've been at the housing authority and at GBIC and different organizations, right? And it's a process, and you try to find the best candidate. And at the end of the day, if it's someone internal, it's someone internal. But
Hmm.
you have to go through the process and make sure you market the position effectively, and making sure everyone's aware of what we have and what we offer, and the opportunity.
Has that search already started?
I'm not aware. I'm
Okay.
not aware at this stage.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then of course the other thing is, and I guess I did put a question with regards to the proposed six charter propositions. What are the propositions going to do to improve city government in general? I mean, I know there's the first proposition is something that is new, which is basically salaries for the commission and the mayor. I'll be honest with you personally, and this is me speaking personally. I think it's kind of shameful that for a long time our city leaders have not been paid. Shocking. I mean, what that pay should be is another question, right? But um, is is that something that was put in recently, or was it something already in the works once when the charter committee came about?
My understanding is is all those amendments came through the charter
Okay.
committee, right? Those are all recommendations based on their review of other cities and best practices, and all those items were fully discussed at the commission level. And there were minor tweaks that were made to each one of those. And I see both sides of the argument on the salary issue.
Yeah.
I just know that since I've been elected official, I understood that this wasn't a paid position. This is a service position for me, and I think it would be disingenuous for me to start saying that I want a salary. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's up to the voters at the end of the day to make sure that they decide it, and they're our boss, right? They decide how this is going to go, and
Right.
but ultimately, if it does pass, I am not, you know, I got into this service position, knowing that it wasn't paid, and I won't take a salary because I don't want to make it seem like it was self-serving in any way.
Yeah. I mean, I know in the past there was attempts to not pay a salary, but I think there was at one time there was an attempt to include health insurance. Maybe but I don't think that ever passed,
Yeah.
or if it did, it got taken out and so forth. But I mean, I haven't really heard too many complaints about the salary. Like I said, I personally have felt that for a long time our city leaders should be compensated. Whether that be a salary, a car allowance, extra cell phone uh, coverage. Personally for me, but like I said, I
Yeah.
haven't heard too many complaints. But it's good to know that you are willing to forego the salary, or even you know uh, donate the salary to a charitable cause.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do. At the end of the day, it won't benefit me, and if it does, I mean, I do see both sides, and I do see, service at this stage is difficult for people that cannot afford to do so, right? If you don't have a full-time job that can ble you know, you got to sacrifice your time and you might sacrifice income, right? So that does reduce the amount of people that can actually run for office. So I do see that point, and I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing, it may lead to a better role of qualified candidates too. How many people have thought of running and don't because, you spend too many times at a
Yeah.
meeting or at a board, So it may lead to that. So I just wanted to kind of touch base a little bit with regards to that. What about some of the other propositions? What are they going to do with regards to improving the city government in general?
Well, I believe a number of them are in relations to PUB and the board appointment process or the board member removal process, right? The way it currently stands is the charter um, only allows the removal of a board member with a 7-0 vote.
Mm.
It has to be unanimous, and we can only remove one board member a year,
Ah,
right? And so it's difficult if we needed to remove someone for likely for a good reason, right?
right.
We it's probably not possible. Um, so at this, I believe the recommendation from the charter committee was a super majority, a 2/3 super majority. So 5 out of the 7 commission members would have to vote to appoint or remove a PUB board member, and I believe they want to extend the number that we could possibly remove to 3 in any given year. Um, so that's those are various amendments on the ballot in May. The other one I believe is regards to the city attorney. I think that clarifies more the attorney's role within the city of Brownsville and provides more guidance on his oversight to other boards and making sure that basically our legal expenses are as efficient as possible. Because I think once of all these boards and commissions, they might hire their own firm to do legal work for them, and we have all these legal firms working for us. But at the end of the day, if the city attorney's office can handle some of it, then well, that saves money at the end of the day, right? So
Right.
just trying to be more efficient. And then I believe there's a one regarding um, changing the maximum length for the city manager for his or her contract from 2 to 3 years, and that was based on a recommendation based on a review of other cities,
Mm-hmm.
and also during the search process that was brought up as a constraint. Most cities don't have 2 years, so it's difficult at times to attract candidates that only have a 2-year contract. So um, going to 3 years is a step in that direction to make sure it's more favorable to for the city to make sure we attract better candidates.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the contract was only a 2-year contract. When I read about that, I was like,
Yeah.
I thought it was like a 4-year contract, but no, it's actually a
No.
2-year contract. So,
Yeah, and just for the public, right? It is a contract that can be terminated at whenever if we need to. It's not set in stone, right? That person has to stay here the whole time, right? But there are ways to end the contract and you know pivot if we need to. So that's what it is.
yeah. All righty. Well, it looks like we've gone almost a full hour, John. Hopefully, you had fun tonight. I know that I wanted to bring you on for a long time, and I just hadn't got around to get in touch with you. But I'm glad that you came on tonight on the show. Like I said, our viewers are very interested in who's running for office, and obviously because it has a direct impact, especially to our channel with regards to SpaceX. So I appreciate the time and the opportunity, for you to appear on the show. Are there any final words you'd like to tell our viewers as well as the voters out there with regards to you and
I just like to say how important this election is. It really sets the tone for our future and making sure that we have a stable business-minded government going forward, right? And some people that are going to work hard, that have experience and education and the service history to make sure that things are done the right way and that we are maximizing our potential.
Well, that's definitely one thing we're very glad is that we've got some pretty good candidates running for office, and like I said, we appreciate you coming on tonight, and hopefully it's not the last time. Especially if you're successful in May, I'll be calling you every month.
Now, I
So,
had a great time, and whenever you want to call me, I'll be happy to appear.
not a problem, John. Well, you take care, and thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Good
Take
night.
care.
Bye bye.
Good night.